I remember about Walt Whitman was that he was an American, he was homosexual, he was a nurse in the Civil War, he was the good gray poet, and he influenced the beats. But beyond that, I had simply overlooked him. Now, I had a shallow view of this man, but that didn't mean that I had shallow experiences without him. I experienced, and some of the experiences I had were amazing, unexpected moments of grace. Sometimes a sensation, sometimes a mentation, sometimes a perception that put everything in its right place, that offered me brief surrender to be a part of the world beyond good and bad, that shining, incomprehensible waking dream, the blazing experience of simply being. I didn't need a lover or a clique or a cause, except when I was in that frame of mind, I was never alone. And I knew that most causes eventually ate their young. And everybody, whether they knew it or not, was in my clique, and I visited appreciation upon my lovers if I had any. It went beyond being in the now. It came with the astonishing ability to be in the past, the present, and the future all at once, and I didn't even have to get rid of my ego. It was along for the ride. It was the perfection of being in the center, with its astonishing mobility of imagination, as if I and it were creating ourselves at the same time, and we were collaborating for some reason just over that hill there, or way off on the horizon. A giddy teleology more akin to science fiction than to sociology, and it was free. You didn't even have to be literate to get it. You didn't have to be good, or eat certain foods, or be a certain way. And the horny, weird love of everything, of being flat in the hood of a car, stone cold sober because you'd finally seen the distance to the stars, or 100 smiles in a single smile of someone simply smiling, and then it would gradually begin to fade, or the bubble would burst, and everything would be 10 inches from my face again, afraid rather than amazed, 86 from the sky, and definitely not going to surrender. It was so surprising that I could have such a simple, obvious insight and lose it. Now, I sought these experiences again, of course, but I couldn't create them with my will. They weren't in books, sometimes a little, but they really weren't. And gurus, they always gave me the heebie-jeebies. And political people always made me feel guilty. I grew up in the Bible Belt, see? And so I can always sniff out any lingering sense of original sin. Or that whiff of sneaky greed that comes with that holier-than-thou ambition. Now, a friend of mine suggested that I read Walt Whitman. Why Walt Whitman? Because his experiences sound similar to yours. Now, having lived in Iowa City for 9 years, and having been around the renowned Iowa Writers' Workshop, I had developed an aversion to poets. They seem more involved in patenting their own little Rubik's Cube of verbs and adjectives and slicing each other to bits with their paranoid hee-haw laughs and their coruscate comebacks than daring to write anything they actually meant. I had stopped writing poetry and I had stopped reading it. So I winced when I thought of a poet actually speaking to my oh-so-mortal soul. And then I read him, Walt Whitman, and it was true. And I was sorely amazed. I mean, his poetry was at times ponderous, to say the least, outrageous, over the top, but he had assuredly meant it. He really meant it, and he meant it for everybody, with his lists, his spiral and meandering journeys through birth and death. He had captured that oh-so-desired state of being and framed the universe with such size that it made it easier to surrender. He knew the very nature of freedom. When Whitman was 6 years old, standing among the crowds in Brooklyn, Lafayette picked him up and kissed him on the cheek. Whitman came to view this as a laying on of hands. He would be the poet of democracy. He was for common people, regular people, flea market people, and he was common. A carpenter's son, born in 1819 in West Hills, Long Island, the second of 8 surviving children. You survived childhood then, you weren't entitled to it. His father, Walter Sr., speculated in real estate during Brooklyn's housing boom, which meant buying an empty lot, constructing a small frame house on it, moving your family in, then selling it out from under them at a profit and starting the whole process over again. Whitman quit school at 11 and began his life as a laborer, working as a printer's apprentice. Most of the other major writers of his time enjoyed highly structured classical educations at private institutions. Whitman had to fabricate his own rough and informal curriculum from the public resources that 1830s Manhattan offered him. Music, theater, museums, lectures, sermons, along with his constant reading and the experiences he acquired during his self-professed loafing. He was fired more than once for wandering off his job. Of any of the OGs, the original gangsters, the other two were Emerson and Thoreau, Whitman is the real one for me. He self-published his poem anonymously and also set most of the type. He wrote reviews of his book under different names, both panning and praising his work, so as to amplify the illusion that his book was causing a big stir. The actual reviews went something like this. His poetry is reckless and indecent, quite out of place amid the decorum of modern society. But Emerson recognized Whitman as America's first great poet. I rub my eyes a little to see if this sunbeam were no illusion, he said. I could relate to this guy. He hung around people who worked on ferry boats, who drove the omnibuses through the crowded streets, firemen, policemen, prostitutes, thieves, slaves, and loafers like himself. New York was one hell of a place in his time. The Five Corners, crammed with catacombs of jobless immigrants and thousands of abandoned children. Everybody thinks the West was wild, but the Wild East was wilder. Talk about red states, blue states. America was 79 years old and 5 years from civil war, where at least 618,000 would die. Disunity, disenfranchisement. Did you see the film The Gangs of New York? That was Whitman's time, around 1863. Not a lot of health insurance then. New York City, with its seasons of typhoid, cholera, and consumption, the streets filled with pigs and cattle and horses and free-range chickens, and cats and dogs and rats and shit and more shit and dirt roads. And in fact, when it was raining, the stuff was 2 feet thick. Imagine that with the flying contents of chamber pots. Yeah. Yet Whitman found divinity in the world he lived in and in the people who lived around him. In the year 2007, American isn't the most popular nationality to be, but it was an American who wrote that poem. And it was in part because he lived in America that he did write that poem, because America to him was the great experiment, and that being an American meant anyone who lived here, and he meant anyone. Finally, I memorized his poem, Walking the Streets of San Francisco. I can talk to myself all day if I hold my hand to my ear like a cell phone. Actually, I've stopped that formality. Nobody even actually notices me. It's an amazing place to walk. What am I talking about? Hike. You hike in San Francisco. So many people here. And it's a little city, actually, as cities go. But that's why it's so perfect for a loafer. So many colors, so many kinds of people in one little, very lumpy place. I've given up my gym card. I do my Whitman walk instead. I haven't driven a car in a year or ridden a bike. I just walk and practice Whitman lines and watch the amazing faces go by. All the damn stories, every one of you the center of the universe. Every one of you living your lives with me. This city's small enough and big enough to see all the generations go by. And the yearning, oh my God, it runs through the streets on wire, on rail, on tire, on foot and paw and claw. But you can get away from it all and into the country if you know which hill to climb. Yeah, and there are so many hills with weeds and trees and birds and fog, wind and wildflowers. Then you can climb down through the winding streets between the little houses and the dainty, generous gardens and the rooftops with the ornamental sun flares, say on Potrero Hill, down to the sunny third world of Mission and the junkie ghosts and families moving around the passed out bodies between 16th and 17th, and the people scattered on the concrete under plastic bags and packing blankets even before the sun goes down, just to catch a safe place to sleep between the street lights and the danger of utter darkness in my neighborhood in Alabama and environs. And then on 6th Street, there's wine country. And then one block down, the ritzy shopping malls and the tourist or the womanly couples and the hemp-hatted backpack hip on Valencia and the Castro. Oh, would Whitman like the Castro? And the magic houses on the hills above it, and the grandeur of everything from Twin Peaks. And did I mention the light? The light. The light. I think Walt Whitman would like this town. Whitman said that when you read his words, he is with you. Listen to this. When you read these, I that was visible have become invisible. Now it is you, compact, visible, realizing my poems, seeking me, fancying how happy you were if I could be with you and become my comrade. Be it as if I were with you. Be not too certain, but I am now with you. And now, song of myself. I celebrate myself, and what I assume, you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me, as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass, the smoke of my own breath, my respiration and inspiration, the beating of my heart, the passing of blood and air through my lungs, the sniff of green leaves and dry leaves, and of the shore and dark-colored sea rocks, and of hay in the barn, the sound of the belched words of my voice, words loose to the eddies of the wind, the song of me rising from bed and meeting the sun. Have you reckoned 1,000 acres much? Have you reckoned the earth much? Have you practiced so long to learn to read? Have you felt so proud to get at the meaning of poems? Stop this day and night with me, and you shall possess the origin of all poems. You shall possess the good of the earth and sun, there are millions of suns left. You shall no longer take things at second or third hand, nor look through the eyes of the dead, nor feed on the specters in books. You shall not look through my eyes either, nor take things from me. You shall listen to all sides and filter them from yourself. I have heard what the talkers were talking, the talk of the beginning and the end. But I do not talk of the beginning or the end. There was never any more inception than there is now, nor any more youth or age than there is now, and there will never be any more perfection than there is now, nor any more heaven or hell than there is now. Urge and urge and urge, always the procreant urge of the world, always substance and increase, always a knit of identity, always distinction, sure as the most certain sure, plumb in the uprights, stout as a horse, affectionate, haughty, electrical, I. And this mystery, here we stand. Trippers and askers surround me. People I meet, the effect upon me of my early life, of the ward and city I live in, of the nation, the latest news, discoveries, inventions, societies, authors old and new, my dinner, dress, associates, looks, business, compliments, dues, the real or fancied indifference of some man or woman I love, the sickness of one of my folks, or of myself, or ill-doing, or loss, or lack of money, or depressions, or exaltations. They come to me days and night and go from me again. But they are not the me myself. Loaf with me on the grass. Loose the stop from your throat. Not words. Not music or rhyme I want, not custom or lecture, not even the best, only the lull I like, the hum of your velvet voice. I mind how we lay in June, such a transparent summer morning. You settled your head athwart my hips, and gently turned over upon me, and parted the shirt from my bosom bone, and plunged your tongue to my bare, stripped heart, and reached till you felt my beard, and reached till you held my feet. Swiftly arose and spread around me the peace and joy and knowledge that pass all the art and arguments of the earth. And I know that the hand of God is the elder hand of my own. And I know that the Spirit of God is the eldest brother of my own, and that all the men ever born are also my brothers, and the women my sisters and lovers. A child said, "What is the grass?" fetching it to me with full hands. How could I answer the child? I do not know what it is any more than he. I guess it must be the flag of my disposition, out of hopeful green stuff woven. Or I guess it is the handkerchief of the Lord, a scented gift and remembrancer designedly dropped, bearing the owner's name some way in the corners that we may see and remark and say, whose? Or I guess the grass is itself a child, the produced babe of the vegetation. or I guess it is a uniform hieroglyphic, and it means sprouting alike in broad zones and narrow zones, growing among black folks as among white, Canuck, Tuckahoe, Congressman, Cuff. And now it seems to me the beautiful uncut hair of graves. Tenderly will I use you, curling grass. It may be you transpire from the breasts of young men. And maybe if I had known them, I would have loved them. It may be you are from old people and from women and from offspring taken soon out of their mother's laps. And here you are, the mother's laps. Oh, I perceive after all so many uttering tongues, and I perceive they do not come from the roofs of mouths for nothing. What do you think has become of the young and old men? And what do you think has become of the women and children? They're alive and well somewhere. The smallest sprout shows there is really no death, and if ever there was, it led forward life and does not wait at the end to arrest it and cease the moment life appeared. All goes onward and outward, and nothing collapses. And to die is different from what anyone supposed, and luckier. I pass death with the dying and birth with the new wash babe, and am not contained between my hat and boots, and peruse manifold objects, no two alike, and every one good, the earth good, and the stars good, and their adjuncts all good. I am not an earth nor an adjunct of an earth. I am the mate and companion of people, all just as immortal and fathomless as myself. They do not know how immortal, but I do. Every kind for itself and its own. For me, mine male and female. For me, all that have been boys and that loved women. For me, the sweetheart and the old maid. For me, mothers and the mothers of mothers. For me, lips that have smiled, eyes that have shed tears. For me, children and the begetters of children. The little one sleeps in its cradle. I lift the gauze and look a long time and silently brush away flies with my hand. The youngster and the red-faced girl turn aside up the bushy hill. I peeringly view them from the top. The suicide sprawls on the bloody floor of the bedroom. It is so. I witnessed the corpse there. The pistol had fallen. The blab of the pave, the tires of carts and slough of boot soles and talk of the promenaders, the hurrahs for popular favorites, the fury of roused mobs, the flap of the curtain litter, the sick man inside borne to the hospital, the impassive stones that receive and return so many echoes. What groans of overfed or half-starved who fall on the flags sunstruck or in fits. What exclamations of women taken suddenly who hurry home and give birth to babes. What living and buried speech is always vibrating here. What howls restrained by decorum. Arrest of criminals, slights, adulterous offers made, acceptances, rejections with convex lips. I mind them or the resonance of them. I come again and again. Alone far on the wilds and mountains I hunt, wandering amazed at my own lightness and glee. In the late afternoon, choosing a safe spot to pass the night, kindling a fire and broiling the fresh-killed game, soundly falling asleep on the gathered leaves, my dog and gun by my side. The Yankee Clipper is under her 3 sky sails. She cuts the sparkle and scud. My eyes settle the land. I bend at her prow or shout joyously from the deck. The boatmen and clam diggers arose early and stopped for me. I tucked my trouser ends in my boots and went and had a good time. You should have been with us that day around the chowder kettle. I saw the marriage of the trapper in the open air in the far west. The bride was a red girl. Her father and his friend sat nearby, cross-legged and dumbly smoking. They had moccasins to their feet and large, thick blankets hanging from their shoulders. On a bank lounged the trapper. He was dressed mostly in skins. His luxuriant beard and curls protected his neck. One hand rested on his rifle, the other hand held firmly the wrist of the red girl. She had long eyelashes. Her head was bare. Her coarse, straight locks descended upon her voluptuous limbs and reached to her feet. The runaway slave came to my house and stopped outside. I heard his motions crackling the twigs of the wood pile. Through the swung half door of the kitchen, I saw him limpsy and weak, and went where he sat on a log and let him in and assured him and brought water and filled a tub for his sweated body and bruised feet and gave him a room that entered from my own and gave him some coarse, clean clothes and remember perfectly well his revolving eyes and his awkwardness and remember putting plasters on the galls of his neck and ankles. He stayed with me a week before he was recuperated and passed north. I had him sit next to me at table. My firelock leaned in the corner. "28 young men bathed by the shore. 28 young men and all so friendly. 28 years of womanly life and all so lonesome. She owns the fine house by the rise of the bank. She hides handsome and richly dressed aft the blinds of the window. Which of the young men does she like the best? The homeliest of them is beautiful to her. Where are you off to, lady? For I see you. You splash in the water there, yet stay stock still in your room. Dancing and laughing along the beach came the 29th bather. The rest did not see her, but she saw them and loved them. The beards of the young men glistened with wet. It ran from their long hair. Little streams passed over their bodies. An unseen hand also passed over their bodies. It descended tremblingly from their temples and ribs. The young men float on their backs. Their white bellies swell to the sun. They do not ask who seizes fast to them. They do not know who puffs and declines with pendant and bending arch. They do not think whom they souse with spray. Oxen that rattle the yoke or halt in the shade. What is that you express in your eyes? It seems to me more than all the print I have read in my life. My tread scares the wood drake and wood duck in my distant and day-long ramble. They rise together, they slowly circle around. I believe in those winged purposes and acknowledge the red, yellow, and white playing within me and consider the green and violet and the tufted crown intentional and do not call the tortoise unworthy because she is not something else. And the mockingbird in the swamp never studied the gamut, yet trills pretty well to me. And the look of the bay mare shames silliness out of me. The wild gander leads his flock through the cool night. Your honk, he says, and sounds it down to me like an invitation. The pert may suppose it meaningless, but I listen closer. I find its purpose and place up there toward the November sky. I see in them and myself the same old law. The pure contralto sings in the organ loft. The carpenter dresses his plank. The tongue of his foreplane whistles its wild ascending lisp. The spinning girl retreats and advances at the hum of the big wheel. The farmer stops by the bars of a Sunday and looks at the oats and rye. The lunatic is carried at last to the asylum, a confirmed case. He will never sleep anymore as he did in the cot in his mother's bedroom. The quadroon girl is sold at the stand. The drunkard nods by the barroom stove. The machinist rolls up his sleeves. The policeman travels his beat. The gatekeeper marks who pass. The bugle calls in the ballroom. The gentlemen run for their partners. The dancers bow to each other. The youth lies awake in the cedar roof garret and harks to the musical rain. The clean-haired Yankee girl works with her sewing machine or in the factory or mill. The conductor beats time for the band and all the performers follow him. The child is baptized. The convert is making the first professions. The regatta is spread on the bay. How the white sails sparkle. The bride unrumples her white dress. The opium eater reclines with rigid head and just open lips. The prostitute draggles her shawl, her bonnet bobs, and her tipsy and pimpled neck. The president holds a cabinet council. He is surrounded by the great secretaries. The crew of the fish smack pack repeated layers of halibut in the hold. The Missourian crosses the plains toting his wares and his cattle. The fare collector goes to the train. The tinners are tinning the roof. The foremans are flooring the floor. The masons are calling for mortar. Seasons pursuing each other. The plower plows and the mower mows, and the winter grain falls in the ground. The city sleeps and the country sleeps. The living sleep for their time. The dead sleep for their time. The old husband sleeps by his wife, and the young husband sleeps by his wife. And such as it is to be of these, more or less I am. Stuffed with the stuff that is coarse, and stuffed with the stuff that is fine. One is the great nation, the nation of many nations, the smallest the same, and the largest the same. A southerner, soon as a northerner, a Hoosier, a Badger, a Buckeye, a learner with the simplest, a teacher of the thoughtfulest, a novice beginning an experience of myriads of seasons, of every hue and trade and rank, of every caste and religion, not merely of the New World, but of Africa, Europe, or Asia, a wandering savage, a farmer, mechanic, or artist, a gentleman, sailor, lover, a Quaker, a prisoner, fancy man, rowdy, lawyer, physician, or priest. I resist anything better than my own diversity, and breathe the air and leave plenty after me, and am not stuck up and am in my place. These are the thoughts of all men in all ages and lands. They are not original with me. If they are not yours as much as mine, they are nothing or next to nothing. If they do not enclose everything, they are next to nothing. If they are not the riddle and the untying of the riddle, they are nothing. If they are not just as close as they are distant, they are nothing. This is the grass that grows wherever the land is and water is. This is the common air that bathes the globe. This is the tasteless water of souls. It is for the illiterate. It is for the judges of the Supreme Court. It is for the federal capital and state capitals. It is for the admirable communes of literary men and composers and singers and lecturers and engineers and savants. It is for the endless races of working people and farmers and seamen. This is the trill of 1,000 clear cornets and scream of the octave flute and strike of triangles. Have you heard that it was good to gain the day? I also say it is good to fall. Battles are lost in the same spirit in which they are won. I sound triumphal drums for the dead. I fling through my embouchures the loudest and gayest music to them. Vivas to those who have failed! And to those whose war vessels sank in the sea, and all those themselves who sank in the sea. And to all generals at lost engagements, and all overcome heroes and the numberless unknown heroes, equal to the greatest heroes known. This is the meal pleasantly set. This is the meat and drink for natural hunger. It is for the wicked, just the same as the righteous. The kept woman and sponger and thief are hereby invited. Do you guess I have some intricate purpose? Well, I have. For the April rain has, and the mica on the side of a rock has. Do you take it I would astonish? Does the daylight astonish? or the early red start twittering through the woods, do I astonish more than they? This hour I tell things in confidence I might not tell everybody, but I will tell you. Who goes there? Hankering, gross, mystical, nude. How is it I extract strength from the beef I eat? What is a man anyhow? What am I and what are you? All I mark is my own, you shall offset it with your own, else it were time lost listening to me. I do not snivel that snivel the world over, that months are vacuums in the ground but wallow in filth, that life is a suck and a sell, and nothing remains at the end but threadbare crepe and tears. I have pried through the strata and analyzed to a hair and counseled with doctors and calculated close and found no sweeter fat than sticks to my own bones. To me, the converging objects of the universe perpetually flow. All are written to me, and I must get what the writing means. I exist as I am. That is enough. If no other in the world be aware, I sit content. And if each and all be aware, I sit content. One world is aware, and by far the largest to me, and that is myself. And whether I come to my own today or 10,000 years, I can cheerfully take it now, or with equal cheerfulness I can wait. My foothold is tenoned and mortised in granite. I laugh at what you call dissolution, and I know the amplitude of time. I am the poet of the body, and I am the poet of the soul. The pleasures of heaven are with me, and the pains of hell are with me. The first I graft and increase upon myself. The latter I translate into a new tongue. I am the poet of the woman, the same as the man. And I say that it is as great to be a woman as it is to be a man. I chant a new chant of dilation. We have had ducking and deprecating about enough. Have you outstripped the rest? Are you the president? It is a trifle. They will more than arrive there, everyone, and still pass on. I am he that walks with the tender and growing night. Press close, bare bosom night. Press close, magnetic, nourishing night. Night of south winds, night of the large few stars, still nodding night, mad, naked summer's night. Smile of voluptuous, cool-breathed earth, earth of the slumbering and liquid trees, earth of departed sunset, earth of the mountains misty-topped, earth of the vitreous pour of the full moon just tinged with blue, earth of shine and dark mottling the tide of the river, earth of the limpid gray of clouds, brighter and clearer for my sake, far, swooping, elbowed earth, rich, apple-blossomed earth, smile, for your lover comes. We hurt each other as the bride and the bridegroom hurt each other. You see, I resign myself to you also. I get what you mean. I behold from the beach your crooked, inviting fingers. I believe you refuse to go back with feeling of me. We must have a turn together. I undress. Hurry me out of sight of the land. Cushion me soft. Rock me in billowy drowse. Dash me with amorous wet. I can repay you. Sea of stretched ground swells, sea breathing broad in convulsive breaths, sea of the brine of life, sea of unshoveled and always ready graves, howler and scooper of storms, capricious and dainty sea, I am integral with you. I too am of one phase and of all phases. I moisten the roots of all that is grown. I beat the gong of revolt and stop with fugitives and them that plot and conspire. Walt Whitman, an American, one of the roughs. No sentimentalist, No standard above men or women or apart from them. No more modest than immodest. Through me, forbidden voices, voices of sexes and lusts, voices veiled, and I remove the veil, voices indecent by me clarified and transfigured. I do not press my finger across my mouth. I keep as delicate around the bowels as around the head and heart. Copulation is no more rank to me than death is. Seeing, hearing, and feeling are miracles. The scent of these armpits is aroma finer than prayer. I merely stir, press, feel with my fingers, and am happy. To touch my person to someone else's is about as much as I can stand. Is this then a touch? Quivering me to a new identity? Blind, loving, sharp-toothed touch, sheathed, hooded, wrestling touch. Did it make you ache so leaving me? Swift wind, space, my soul. Now I know it is true what I guessed at, what I guess what I loved on the grass, what I guess while I lay alone in my bed, or again as I walk the beach under the paling stars of the morning. I am afoot with my vision over the western persimmon, over the long-leaved corn and the delicate blue-flowered flax, walking the old hills of Judea with the beautiful, gentle God by my side, speeding through space, speeding through heaven and the stars, carrying the crescent moon that carries its own full mother in its belly, storming, enjoying, planning, loving, cautioning, backing and filling, appearing and disappearing. I tread day and night such roads. For me, the keepers of convicts shoulder their carbines and keep watch. It is I let out in the morning and barred at night. Not a mutineer walks handcuffed to the jail, but I am handcuffed to him. Askers embody themselves in me, and I am embodied in them. I project my hat and sit shame-faced and beg. I troop, one of an average, unending procession. We walk the roads of Ohio and Massachusetts and Virginia and Wisconsin and New York and New Orleans and Texas and Montreal and San Francisco and Savannah and Charleston and Mexico, inland and by the seacoast and boundary lines, and we pass the boundary lines. Our swift ordinances are on their way over the whole earth. The blossoms we wear in our hats are the growth of 2,000 years. Downhearted doubters, dull and excluded, frivolous, moping, angry, affected, disheartened, atheistical. I know every one of you. And I know the unspoken interrogatories. By experience, I know them. Each who passes is considered, and each who stops is considered, and not a single one can it fail. It cannot fail the young man who died and was buried, nor the young woman who died and was put by his side, nor the little child that peeped in at the door and then drew back and was never seen again, nor the old man who has lived without purpose and feels it with bitterness worse than gall, nor him in the poorhouse tubercled by rum and the bad disorder. Immense have been the preparations for me, faithful and friendly the arms that have helped me, cycled, ferried my cradle, rowing and rowing like cheerful boatmen, for room to me, stars kept aside in their own rings. Before I was born out of my mother, generations guided me. All forces have been steadily employed to complete and delight me. Now I stand on this spot with my soul. I open my scuttle at night, and I see the far sprinkled systems, and all I see, as far as I can cipher, edge but the rim of the farther systems, Wider and wider they spread, expanding outward and forever outward. See, ever so far, there was limitless space outside of that. Count ever so much, there was limitless time around that. I tramp a perpetual journey. My signs are a rainproof coat and good shoes and a staff cut from the woods. No friend of mine takes his ease in my chair. I have no chair. Nor church, nor philosophy. I lead no man to a dinner table or library or meal. But each man and each woman of you, I lead upon a knoll. My left hand hooks you round the waist. My right hand points to landscapes of continents and a plain public road. Not I, not anyone else can travel that road for you. You must travel it for yourself. Oh, it is not far. It is within reach. Perhaps you have been on it since you were born and did not know. Perhaps it is everywhere, on water and on land. Shoulder your duds, and I will mine, and let us hasten forth. This day, before dawn, I ascended a hill, and I looked at the crowded heavens, and I said to my spirit, when we become the unfolders of those orbs, and of the pleasure and knowledge and everything in them, shall we be filled and satisfied then? And my spirit said, no. Sit a while, wayfarer. Here are biscuits to eat, and here is milk to drink. But as soon as you sleep and renew yourself in sweet clothes, I will certainly give you my goodbye kiss and open the gate for your egress hence. Long enough have you dreamed contemptible dreams. Now I wash the gum from your eyes. You must habit yourself to the dazzle of the light and of every moment of your life. I have said that the soul is not more than the body, and I have said that the body is not more than the soul, and nothing, not God, is greater to one than oneself is. And whoever walks a furlong without sympathy walks to his funeral dressed in his shroud. And I cry to mankind, be not curious about God. For I, who am curious about each, am not curious about God. I hear and behold God in every object, yet I understand God not in the least. Why should I wish to see God better than this day? I see something of God in every hour of the 24, and each moment then, in the faces of men and women, I see God. And in my own face in the glass, I find letters from God dropped in the streets, and every one is signed by God's name. And I leave them where they are, for I know that others will probably follow forever and ever. And as to you, death, and you bitter hug of mortality, it is idle to try to alarm me. And as to you, corpse, I guess you're good manure. But that does not offend me. And as to you, life, I reckon you are the leavings of many deaths. I sound my barbaric yap over the roofs of the world. I depart as air. I shape my white locks at the runaway sun. I bequeath myself to the dirt to grow from the grass I love. If you want me again, look for me under your boot soles. You will hardly know who I am or what I mean, but I shall be good health to you, nevertheless, and filter and fiber your blood. Failing to fetch me at first, keep encouraged. Missing me one place,